I hope you all are doing well. I was standing in my kitchen the other day and I had the thought that I needed to speak about some of my experiences on this journey um, because I feel like I've been around the block in terms of all the different. Well, it's not that I feel like I have been, but when I talk to people, sometimes there seems to be this expansive experience that I've had with all these different kinds of sectors in the spiritual community. Um, and there was one in particular that I wanted to talk about. And mostly this is because when I started on my journey, I was extremely confused. The world of spirituality and metaphysics and new age things, all these things that we see out there and that we probably all engage with now on a regular basis was absolutely not a part of my life. For whatever reason, I had never come across it, had never been introduced to it, and it never appealed to me. It was really a foreign kind of thing. It was one of those things like where I would walk by those neon signs for palm readers or tarot card readers, and it just wouldn't even faze me. It was like that dark underworld that I never cared to connect with. So, of course, I went through a rude awakening with the twin flame and all kinds of things. But what happened was that mostly what I experienced was confusion and pain. Um, it was this feeling of something was always wrong. What is wrong with me? And why can't I just take these classes that other people are taking, like, learning about my intuition or learning how to channel or, learning about crystals? Like, why couldn't I just take these classes and be okay with it and take the information and just go and use it? And I was continually told that I had, gifts and skills, and I was supposed to be helping people with that, through that. And that just confused me even more because I had no idea what they were talking about. And so I just felt like I was constantly wandering in this circle. And it was like there was some big secret that someone wasn't telling me. It's like, well, how do you connect and how do you do this? And, I think when I was taking this channeling class, it was learning how to channel. I was in this class with other women, and they just somehow seemed to be able to do it. It came, to them quite naturally. And for me, I would just cry and I would feel pain in my body and all these kinds of things. And so, my teacher eventually said, well, I think you need to do some soul retrieval. There's other things going on with you. And it just started this journey of having millions and millions of issues and learning that even though I did soul retrieval, I still struggled, right? So I was like, well, what is the answer here? Why does it feel like there's all these levels and layers of things that I have to work through, and why are other people not experiencing this? And what it ended up being was that I would just continually cry, and I was so upset, and I felt like I was never going to get out of this. And so I was searching for things to help heal myself. But the things that were out there, it was like, okay, you can do soul retrieval, you can do Reiki, you can get your energy cleared and your chakras aligned, and you can do Akashic record readings and all these kinds of things. And yet in my mind, I was like, I'm going to spend the rest of my life doing this. Like, to have one Akashic record reading for an hour and a half at whatever the cost is, and to go through one lifetime, like, are you kidding me? This is going to take me forever. And I'm never going to get to the end of wherever I felt I was supposed to be going, and I didn't even know where that was, So I remember every time I found a new modality that I thought, like, okay, maybe this is the answer. Maybe this is the way. And I remember being in love with the Akashic records and past lives because I thought it was so super fascinating. And what happened was I had a session once, and the reason I went to her was because I started having this experience where I would, as I moved farther along in these classes with this teacher that I was working with, I started to have this experience where I would get really, really excited about this journey and where I was going, and all these wonderful things that people were saying about my abilities, right, and how I was starting to grow. And then this feeling would come over me, and I would just lose that excitement, and it would disappear. And it was a very tangible, very visceral feeling, and I couldn't explain it, and I didn't know what it was. And what happened was, and I'm not even sure that I went to have this reading because of that feeling, but what happened was, she went through this whole life story. It was very descriptive and very interesting, and, talked about how I was somehow captured in Africa, and I'm not sure if I was a teacher then or something to that respect, but I was captured by this tribe, and what happened was they had put this sack over my head, essentially, so that I wouldn't know where they were taking me. And as soon as she said that, I remember feeling like, oh my God, I know that feeling. Like, as she was describing it, I started experiencing it. And she went on and told the story about this lifetime and how eventually I ended up dying and thinking I didn't complete my work in that lifetime, right? But the crazy thing was that after that session, I didn't have that sensation anymore. I never had that feeling of like this darkness dropping over me. And so I found that was really fascinating, that just having this woman tell me about this lifetime and that energy had somehow made that experience go away in my life. But then the thought of like, okay, so every little sensation that I have and that I experience where I start to feel depressed and upset and lost, I'm going to have to go back and have a reading done. Like, how does this make any sense? So, fast forward, I've been doing a different type of energetic work, right? And that was always my feeling, was like, okay, isn't there some main thing where we can go into, right? We go into this, essentially what would be the energetic database, and like, what? Because I remember there was another course I took, right, which was basically like using this pendulum, and it was like, okay, what do I need to know? I'm going to point to all these things, and it's like, there's grief in regards to your dad, in regards to whatever. Okay, well, how many lifetimes? Well, it's like 239 lifetimes of this, right? Like, you've got to be kidding me. Like, now I have to go through and clear each one, and then there's subcategories and all those lifetimes. Like, that's crazy making, and that is insanity. I didn't know that then. I mean, I thought it because I was like, this isn't possible. How can I possibly get through all this? I know that now. But, I remember thinking at the time, like, okay, where's the main general theme here? Like, how can I just get to this theme as a collective energy and pull this out instead of having to go timeline by timeline by timeline? And then, horizontally across and clear out that entire timeline too. Like, you will never get to the end of that. So in this energetic work that I have been doing now and through my own practice of it, is what I would say, like, it encompasses all of these energies, right? It's like looking at all of your lifetimes, all of the energies, like everything that you could possibly hold, which is what it is. It's your complete energy field that we are addressing. So, sometimes I struggle because I feel like doing past life regressions or doing Akashic record readings is interesting. I think it has this sensationalism to it that attracts people to that type of work. And I'm not saying it's not worth doing, but I am saying it's probably a less efficient way if you're really looking to get through your energetic blocks. And it's certainly what I have found. And if I was still doing all of those old modalities, like, I don't know where I'd be. Maybe living on the street right now, because it's just, you can't afford that. And secondly, like, that will just make you insane. Like, you will continually feel broken, because that is what happens, right? It's like, okay, here's another thing. Well, how I thought I, resolved that. And yes, there are still layers, and we're working in different dimensions. So it's not like you address fear and you're all done with fear, right? Because it has so many different components to it. But I do feel that the way that I work now is one of the most efficient ways that I have found. And there may be other ways, right, that I have not experienced, but I do know that, sometimes, like, when we talk about chakras, right, it's like, okay, let's clear your chakras, let's open them up and let's spin them the right way. And then a week later, someone's like, oh, your chakra is blocked, your heart chakra is closed. Like, what did you do? Like, what's wrong? Who said what to you that made you close down your chakra? And it's like, it's total insanity. So, we're living in this program society, which is insane. And then we throw in all these other things that we think we're doing to help ourselves, and that makes us even more crazy, because then we're like, well, here's two different versions of insanity, and now what is true, right? And maybe there's a third option outside of all of this. And I like to think that there is, and it's looking at the full. I think these other modalities tend to, I don't want to say split out, but they don't address everything, right? It's all these different pieces and sectors. But when we look at the full scope and the full range, up and down and left to right, it's like, can we totally encompass that in our work? Yes, we can, and I think that is probably what turns a lot of people off a lot of times and stops them from progressing in their journey, is because, okay, I'm having another session and you're telling me something again. And it happens even in this work too, right? Because we have these fears come up, we have these energies and these feelings, and it's like, well, how come I'm not totally healed? Well, because we are, we're enormous. There's so much to us. It takes work, and it's not just a couple of sessions and we're on our own. Because of all of the distortion that we've experienced, right? And because of all these insertions and all of this entrapment. So it's not, and it's certainly not linear. It's not like you can kind of draw it out and say like, okay, once you hit here, then we're going to go here, we're going to go here. That's not how it works. It does feel like it's all over the place sometimes. But through the work that I have been doing now, I do feel like there is, yes, the healing tends to feel like it's kind of going in these circles like this, but my strength and my ability to pull myself back into center definitely feels like that is on a linear progression, right? Like that is growing and that is strengthening. I don't feel so split out and so confused all the time, and I certainly do not cry and fall apart like I used to when I was going every week for chakra clearings. You know what I mean? So, and that was just insane, because a lot of times too, people can't even tell you like, where is this coming from, right? Like, why is my heart chakra closed again? I don't know. It just is. So we're just going to open it back up. Well, that's like, let's say this probably is not a good example, but you keep your engine, like your car keeps sputtering and dying, right? And so it's like, okay, well, maybe I should go in and maybe I should clean out the engine every time. Like that's a lot of work to take an engine apart and to clean it out, and then to, have the same thing continually happen over and over again. Well, guess what? If you would just put an air filter on it, and then maybe if you would enclose the system a little bit more, and then maybe if you would add some more components, that would keep that engine from getting infiltrated. Like the air outside is toxic. So how do we filter that air? So it's about taking what we know happens to us living in these human bodies, right? Just bombardment of this energy. And then not only the bombardment, but it's already what we hold internally, in terms of, I'll call it, well, I'm thinking in terms of the engine too, right? So maybe there was impurities in these metals, or something was, let's say you use the wrong kind of metal. It's a metal that's not strong enough to withstand the heat. I mean, obviously, okay, we're being a little dramatic here, right? But it's like, well, maybe I need to make my engine out of something else. I need to strengthen it. I need to call in different energies to start to build this structure back up, right? And I need to put different things in place. And that's really how I feel like I work through now, with what I have learned. And it's been, it's really been life altering, I have to say. I've been, my life was turned upside down for at least, that I know of, right, that I'm conscious of, for at least the last 5.5 years. Of that 5.5 years, I have spent a good, I would say, a good year, maybe a year to 9 months of solid work, doing what I do now. And that year compared to, my 42 years of life, like in the physical, my life doesn't look the greatest, right? I've had to give up a lot of time I've given up a lot of attention to my 3D life, and so things look like they've just completely fallen apart. But internally, I feel a strength that I have never had. I have an understanding of things in a way that I have never understood them before. So, to say that, yes, I've been on this journey for 20 years, or I've been doing X, Y, and Z, or I have all of these certificates and all these different modalities of healing, but it's like, but is it benefiting your internal structure, right? And we're only just now getting into anchoring all of this ethereal work into the physical density. So I even kind of question sometimes if I look out at certain individuals or look out into the spiritual community, right? It's like, well, how have they been able to obtain what looks like these perfect lives, or what looks like they're really like, they've kind of elevated themselves to the level of master on the ascension process. And I kind of question that, because I don't know that we're really able to build true foundations in that way, because original source energy really has not been able to anchor and to seed until now. So I question what a lot of these things have been built on, the foundation that these things have been built on. We can build a foundation, but, we're still in this matrix society, this matrix programming. So, I think it's a little bit deceptive, and it's a little bit hard to tell, actually, if we look at, let's just say, the growth or the success of people, to truly know what they have built their foundation on. So, as I spoke in the last video, this next year, and then of course the years following that, for sure, I think we're going to see more evidence, and we're going to start to understand a little bit more what has really been going on, as far as the ascension journey in the spiritual community. So I don't know that was helpful, but I really just felt to kind of talk about my experience, because I certainly have fumbled through so much of this. And just to say that there is a different way. The other thing I do want to mention briefly is just, of course, in regards to twin flames. I always seem to bring that up at the end. But, again, this false light construct that we have been operating out of. The other day it was shown to me, I'm pretty sure it was like the entire architecture of this false light system. And the way the outline of this whole system, it appeared like this, right? So it was this curve and then this drop down. And I just had to laugh, because it's like, it reminded me of a tent, right? So, and I've been hearing this word, this idea of the red tent, and the red always freaks me out a little bit, because to me it's always very demonic. And I did see the monarch mind programming at the top of this, right? So to me, this represented the false light, twin flame. It's basically a fun house. The insanity that we live in as twin flames on this journey. The insanity that we get caught up in, I should say, once you connect with the energy of the twin. And it even has this like gray veil over it. And it's like you start to peer into that, and it's like all these moving parts of like a pinball machine, right? It's like you get flicked up and you think you've made progress, and then you tumble back even lower and you feel even worse, and you have to pick yourself up again and you start over, right? You're like, oh, I'm going to climb this. I'm going to get to the top of this. And it's like, you just never can. And every time you think you've gotten even higher, you get kicked down even worse. And there's many other components to this as well that I was seeing that are just a little bit like, wow, to stand back from this and to watch this is like, it's quite incredible. The two, and it's interesting because they showed the masculine and feminine, and it's like there is this split, and they will never come back together through this system. You think you do, because there's all these mechanics to kind of like flip you back and forth to the sides where you think you're connecting. But in truth, it is created so that you never can. And so, again, as I said, we have to step outside of this program. of this. I'm not even sure what to call it, because it's more than a program. It's like this alter reality of a fun house that we are thrown into, until we can kind of step back from it and say, okay, this is not working. Like, there is something really wrong here, and to look and try and find a different way around this, which is what I was speaking of, right? It's like you have got to, the feminine has got to put, and the feminine is the driver in this. Again, it's like you have to pull yourself out of this and reorder through the new fields. It's not even, I mean, we could say new fields, but it's like you have to connect into original source energy, which is through the new fields. But it's like the masculine is never going to step forward as long as you are in that chaos. And it may feel like they do, and there are many places along that where you can come in and feel like you're connected. But again, it's like, if you're even operating in that system, what are you building your foundation in? And once this starts to fall, I think that I'm a little concerned for the feminine, especially because the other piece of it, right? We just keep expanding and seeing more and more pieces. The other piece of this is that, to me, it feels like the masculine has actually been building in the physical, whether or not anyone is conscious of this. And I got a glimpse of this the other day, that it's like, it's almost like the masculine is going to come back in, and they're ready to connect now. So they've been working through the earth and through the physical, right? And it's like they're starting to become ready to connect in through the etheric energies, and to expand in that direction. And it's like, if they come in and the feminine has been, instead of working etherically to build and be able to bring that into the physical, she's going to be unprepared at this point. And I think what it felt like was that this is going to be a really, really rude awakening for the feminine, because if she's building her foundation in the physical of what, and not with source light, that's not going to be there to hold. That's not going to hold. So I don't know that these two parts can meet right now. It was it just came through as this flash of like, oh my goodness, like this is another part that I don't think I considered, that the masculine might in fact actually have been doing this work. How do I explain this? Energetically in the physical, in order to build up his foundation, right? In order to be prepared for when the feminine did step out into the original and connect and build hers, so that they could meet. And so that was just an extra random thing that I've forgotten I wanted to mention. Okay, I think I'm going to stop there. I hope this was helpful for someone. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and we'll talk soon. Take good care.